Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about pricing your home in the Philly suburbs in 2026. Specifically, we're going to talk about the psychological underpinning of pricing your home in terms of what buyers are thinking, how to maximize price, and we're going to talk about the data and how to use that to your advantage when figuring out what price to set for your home. So pricing a home in the Philadelphia suburbs is not just about, hey, I have this goal price in mind, I'm gonna set it there, and now we're hoping that at least one buyer comes through and says, I'm willing to pay that price. Instead, what we need to do is find the right buyer pool based on what they're looking for your home. You need to take advantage of that first week. The first week that your home is on market is critical, and you need to figure out how to maintain buyer momentum after that first week if your home is still there. The homes that are selling in the Philadelphia suburbs in 2026 are not always the prettiest homes out there. They're the ones priced correctly with an understanding of what buyers are going to be looking at your home, and they're the ones that generate momentum early in the listing so that you don't get stuck either having to reduce your price or just sitting on market at the same price hoping for a miracle. So we're going to talk about a lot of different things today, but that's the general framework we're going to be working with. So this guide, and at the end, I'll give you guys a link to a guide on everything you need to know about selling your home. But this guide, we're going to walk through the pricing system that I use for clients across the Philadelphia suburbs. So Chester County, Montgomery County, Delaware County, Bucks County, and then over into New Jersey. Almost took out my water there. These are going to change depending on your general location. So it's going to be different if you're looking to sell along the main line versus you're looking to sell in Haddonfield. It's also going to change based on the price band in which your home sits. Selling a $650,000 home is very different than selling a $1.5 million home. Both present challenges, but you're dealing with different buyer pools, so you have to situate yourself differently. So we're going to go through some examples of specific locations as well, how your behavior should change based on that, and whether you're in Wayne, Ardmore, Bryn Mawr, Haverford, Devon, Berwyn, Haddonfield, Medford, wherever it might be, there will be at least a nugget of information in the next 15, 20 minutes, however long I talk at you guys for, that you can use if you're selling your home. And again, I'm trying to give you all this information for free, trying to make myself obsolete. But if you have any questions about anything I say, if you're looking for maybe a more in-depth analysis of your personal situation, please feel free to reach out. My contact information, my website information is below. So certainly check that out if you're just interested in having a little bit more knowledge of the Philly metro real estate market, or on the psychological underpinnings of how to properly list your home or buy a home so you understand what your competition may or may not know. Give me a follow, do all the social media stuff. I'd love to keep giving you guys this information. So let's talk about specifically what we're going to cover today. It's going to be 8 broad topics, really probably 5 of them substantive. So we're going to go through what pricing is actually designed to do in 2026. Pricing always is meant to sell your home for an advantageous price for you, but the way to do that does change year to year, season to season. The stack of data that you should be looking at, the numbers that matter to you as a lister. We're going to talk about psychological thresholds. So these are the brackets in buyers' minds that they're using to say, look, we can't really look at a home above this. We shouldn't be looking at a home below this. And then how to situate yourself depending on which bracket you fall in. Talking about how condition affects pricing. So if it's a turnkey home, maybe it just needs some cosmetic changes. Maybe it's a full gut job. And that is going to also influence how you should be pricing your home. And we're going to talk about submarket pricing. So this is very, very tight lens focus on your home. Are you near a major street? What does your yard look like? What does your neighborhood look like? How close are you to gas stations, commuting centers, trains, whatever it might be? And then we're going to talk about the first 7 days. This is where you have the biggest advantage as a seller. Your listing is hopefully blowing the market up. You have a lot of people coming through the door. It's time to take advantage of social media, which is something that you might not get from all realtors, which is big to consider, especially in 2026, and how to take advantage of that and what happens if your home does not move in that first week, which is typical. Right now, we're sitting right around 2 weeks as the average days on market in the Philadelphia suburbs. So when you think about that data from a 30,000 foot view, there are some homes that have been on the market for 9 months. There are some homes that move in a day. You want to be closer to moving in a day than to 9 months. And then what to do when the market gives you feedback. So what does this mean? We're going to talk about price reductions. Do we start talking about concessions? Do we change the marketing scheme? Whatever it might be. And then the eighth and final thing, we'll just wrap up some final takeaways that you can put into practice if you're selling your home, even if it's not with me, which is hurtful, but that's fine. I still want you guys to maximize what you're getting out of the Philadelphia real estate market. All right, give me a sec. Got a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old at home, so I'm chugging coffee like it's my second job here. So what pricing is actually designed to do in 2026? So most sellers, they treat it as a guesstimate. They look at a few comps, they look at the Zestimate, which if you go to my Instagram, I think I have a few videos on why Zestimate is not always accurate. Depending on what price band you're in, it can be off by as much as 35%. I think at least, I think the smallest gap, if I remember, is 8 to 10% fluctuation, high and low. So you could be shortchanging yourself. You could be pricing yourself out of the market. It's really, do not rely on Zestimate. You could be relying on a neighbor's opinion. Maybe they just sold a house, your friends, and now they're telling you, oh, I wish we just priced it 30,000 more. Well, guess what? Your home isn't their home. Maybe it should be 50,000 more. Maybe it should be 20,000 less. And then you can get the market to drive your price up. You shouldn't be listening to just your neighbors. So the problem is pricing is not purely a reflection of value. So yes, you should be looking at comps. Everyone looks at Zestimate initially. You should be talking to neighbors, people in your community. If you know people who are buying a home, ask them what they're looking for in homes. All this is useful information and should be considered. But pricing is really a strategy for increasing demand. Let's think about it this way. Let's say your home, you magically know what it's worth. It's worth $800,000 on the nose. Because you think the market's hot right now, maybe you price it at $815 and you think you'll get enough people at that level. Maybe it goes up to $820, $825. You get lucky, it goes for $825. What would have happened maybe if you priced at $790? You get a ton of people coming through your home. That leads to a lot more offers. Maybe a bunch of them have escalation clauses. Now you're also below that $800,000 price bracket, so people looking in the sevens also see your home. Now, instead of finding 1 or 2 people who are willing to pay $815 and it got up to $825, now you have 20 people who are really willing to pay $790. They all have escalation clauses. Someone falls in love with a park around you, a school around you, it goes up to $845. So you priced 25 below what you initially did, but you're making 20 more than you otherwise would have. That's how buyer psychology can impact the sale of your home. So we talked about this briefly just 15 seconds ago. I said we'd talk about it. We're going to talk about it again. Buyers shop in brackets. Think about when you initially purchased your home. Maybe you're talking to someone now who's looking to buy a home. What do you always ask or want to know at least? What kind of homes are you guys looking at? People would probably say, look, we want this number of bedrooms, we want this number of baths, we want these amenities for our lifestyle, for the kids, for the dogs, for whatever it might be. And you know at the core of it, there's a ceiling on what they're looking for, there's a floor for what they're looking for, and then there's the numbers they're putting into Redfin, Zillow, Realtor, Home, whatever online platform you're using that's not showing you all the listings. There are a lot of off-market listings right now that you guys should be getting access to, and that's why you should be talking to a realtor. But if their ceiling is 800, really what they're going to put in is something like 799, maybe right on the dot 800. So if you're priced at 800, you could be losing all those people looking at 799. If you're priced at, let's say, 805 because you just really wanted to be, say you sold your home in the eights, or maybe that's like a value figure that you wanted to get out of your home, you're losing all of those potential buyers where maybe yours is the home they fall in love with and they're willing to go 15 above where they were previously looking. So understanding that buyers shop in brackets and what that means for pricing your home is crucial. What does pricing have as a job for you? First, it gets you into the right buyer pool, like we just talked about. Second, it creates competition and urgency. If your home is viewed as a deal, as a steal in your buyer bracket, there's going to be urgency right now. And I'm sure you've heard, for the first time in years, we now have more buyers than people willing to sell right now. So you really do have the opportunity to set yourself apart. And I said that backwards. We have more sellers than buyers right now. So you have to set yourself apart. Third, prevent the listing from feeling stale early. It's tough if in those first 2 weeks you don't have people coming through. Now it's sitting on the market. You haven't gotten any offers. You've had a quarter of the people walk through your home that you were hoping for. It feels stale to you. It feels stale to your agent. Now you're already thinking about, just 2 weeks in, right when you hit that median days on market point, do we need to drop the price? And then you're in that battle. Do we do one big drop now? Hope the competition comes back. Do we fully delist and then come back in a month or two, but then maybe you're missing the hot window of the market? Or do we chase the market down by doing incremental price decreases? None of these are ideal. So getting price right the first time is big. So let's talk about some of the numbers that matter and the focus of how you should be determining your price. So I focus on 5 big external factors when coming to a price for my clients. I use true comparable sales. These are recently sold in the same geographic location, very similar amenities, very similar layout, similar time of construction. Everything that goes into these must be similar. So similar home type and size, similar condition, similar micro location, and a closing date that is recent enough to reflect the current market. Once you have these comps, you can start getting a sense of the price for your home, but you also need to be looking at more than just the price for those homes that sold. You need to look at the days on market for those homes. Let's say you found 4 perfect comps, which is hard to do, but you find them and then you're like, oh, these all have sold in my same general location. They have the same number of beds and baths. They're in the same school district. They have the same access to commuting routes. We're near the same park. Why don't we just price it just like them? Well, maybe all of those sat on the market for 8 months. It took a ton of price reductions to get them moving. Is that also how you want your listing to go? Or do we maybe start a little lower? Now it looks like your home's a steal because other people are also looking at those comps, and now you're in a bidding war that actually will get you above them. So this is where sellers often miss the point. Yes, comps are extremely useful on their face. They get more useful when you start looking at their underlying strategy and how their listing went. You also want to look at list to sale price ratio in your buyer bracket. So this gives you a sense of what the negotiations are going to be like, who has power in these negotiations. It's a leverage stat. So if you're looking at the main line, Chester County pockets, correctly priced, turnkey homes, still close close to listing or above listing. But that doesn't mean every home in those markets does. That doesn't mean that's how Bucks County is working right now. That doesn't mean that's how New Jersey is working right now. So in 2026, the market will punish homes that feel risky, dated, or mispriced. So list to sale ratio gives you a sense of what you're going to be entering into in terms of market negotiations. Fourth, we're going to look at active competition and weekend alternatives. So what does this mean? For comps, we're looking at recently sold because we want that final price that it's sold for. We also need to understand what you're competing against right now. What's on the market near you that buyers are looking at and thinking, hey, this is a good deal, this is a bad deal, and how do you make your home look advantageous compared to what they're competing with? And weekend alternatives feeds into this. People go to open houses on weekends. Yes, there are open houses on almost every weekday. There are showings on almost every weekday, but think about what you're doing right now. You're working, you just got home from work, you're about to go to work. That dominates the week. So when people are looking at houses, they're going out on weekends. A lot of people have, hey, get your final and best offer in by Sunday midday, Sunday night, we're making a decision Monday or Tuesday. Weekends dominate the market. So you need to understand who you're competing with, especially in those first few weeks when you're going to have an open house or two. Where are people walking to? And if they're close, are they going to be able to also stop at yours? Are they going to pick the other listing over yours? Are they going to pick yours over the other listing? Understanding all of that. For example, if you're in Wayne looking to sell your house, and there are 7 other houses that just hit the market in Berwyn, Haverford, and Ardmore, that's a cluster that people are going to hit because they can get to all those in 20-25 minutes from each other. Maybe they're not going to take that extra 15 added to that trip and head to Wayne. But you might also set yourself apart. Maybe you have buyers coming down from, let's say, Phoenixville, Valley Forge area. They'll hit yours on the way and get back out. Maybe they're only going to yours. You need to understand how that psychology is going to influence, particularly your first few days, few weeks on market. The final stat that we're going to look at in terms of data to determine what price you should be listing your home at is months of inventory and absorption rate in your specific location and in your price band. So months of inventory, another gauge for leverage. It's not equally useful, but it helps set your strategy. So when inventory is tight, pricing mistakes can be punished by faster buying decisions. When inventory rises, buyers become more patient and more selective. So the key is not simply knowing the number, it's knowing how your pricing decision should be affected by the number. So we've talked about this a bunch. It might be the most important thing to understand in this little speech I'm giving to your faces right now: psychological thresholds and the bracket system that buyers use. So if you take only one thing from this post, let it be this: buyers shop in price brackets. They do not browse the entire market. They filter down to what they're looking at and they scroll within that window. So this is why pricing at, like I talked about earlier, $805,000 can sometimes be worse than $799. Pricing at $1.02 million can perform worse than $990,000. It is not because buyers are irrational, they understand that there are homes there. It's because you're just not going to show up in their searches on platforms. People want deals. They're looking for a home that looks like $1 million home, but is still in that 6-figure range. They're looking for a home that feels like a $900,000 home, but has a 7 at the start of that number. That's how humans work. We want deals. So you need to understand how to make your home appear in more filtered searches. So in the Philly suburbs, thresholds matter even more because buyers are cross-shopping across towns and counties. There are certain places, for example, like where I grew up for part of my life in Delaware. If you're looking in Delaware, and let's say you're looking for $850,000 homes to $1 million homes, and you want to be in that Wilmington region. Maybe one of your parents was a lawyer, that's where you were looking back in the day. You're really only looking at like 2 towns and they're going to show up in the same searches. You have a limited pool here. But if you're in the Philly suburbs, there is a lot of replaceability in terms of specific geographic location. If you're in a Bryn Mawr suburb, a Villanova suburb, a Wayne suburb, and I'm calling them suburbs because I mean not in that immediate downtown where maybe there's less replaceability because you just love downtown Wayne. But if you're 10 minutes outside and you're going to have to get in a car to get to any of these downtowns, there is some replaceability there. So you need to understand that you're not just competing with that immediate circle around Wayne, you're competing with the circle around Villanova, the circle around Phoenixville, the circle around Westchester. All of these can be somewhat replaceable. So a practical approach is to price inside the bracket that you're looking for buyers, not above it. So think about anything that ends with 5 zeros. You want to be just below that rather than above it. So don't price at 1.01 million, price at 999. Does that make sense? Yeah. So let's talk about how condition is affecting price in the Philly suburbs in 2026. So there's three, I'm going to keep talking about bands, 3 bands of condition that your home is going to fit into one of these. There's turnkey, brand new, people are going to buy it, they're not going to have to do a thing to your home and they're going to love it as is. Then there's lightly dated, maybe they're going to have to replace a section or 2 of floors, they're going to paint. It's not going to really change their mentality that much, but maybe it's going to adjust your price by $5,000-$10,000, something that it would cost to like redo the cosmetic side of your house. And then there are project homes. These are project homes. These are homes that are going to require a bigger project to get them to a place that buyers want them. Maybe the kitchen's from the 60s, it's just out of date. It needs to be gutted and updated for people to pay for what an updated home would be in a comparable situation in your submarket. So turnkey homes. Turnkey means more than just staging. It means the home feels maintained, functional, and ready to go for buyers. Buyers are going to pay more for this because it provides them certainty. It's another psychological threshold for buyers. So if you're looking in, especially in quote unquote luxury towns, so think mainline towns, Ardmore, Wayne, you're looking in the luxury towns in New Jersey, Haddonfield, Medford, people are going to put a premium on that turnkey feel where it feels like it's just move-in ready. I'm not going to have to do anything. I'm ready to go. So if your home is truly turnkey, the right strategy is often to price inside the bracket that captures the deepest demand. Launch it hard in the first week. You want buyers to feel that this is their best option. Look, we finally found one, and you're going to have a bunch of people through your door. So moving to the next one, lightly dated but clean, well-maintained. This category often provides buyers, if you're a buyer listening to this, just to get a little insight on what sellers are thinking, this is like the best strategy in terms of finding an opportunity. Those turnkey homes, they're going to have everyone at them. These where, hey, I can put in like 2 weekends worth of work like we did here. We painted, I think this is one of the few rooms we didn't paint when we moved in, but we knew it's not going to be that much for us to paint. We redid part of the deck, and that's really, and we did, my wife and her dad actually on her first maternity leave redid one little section of floors because we had carpet in our dining room. That's the perfect example of lightly dated but clean and maintained. This house was very clean, didn't have to do any structural work, but we had carpet in our dining room. We wanted to change that because it's insane. If you were the previous owner, yikes. So stuff like that. But they're still functional. You're not going to have to gut anything, and there's still pretty minimal risk in this band. For this, you should understand that you're not going to get the premium of a turnkey home, but you're going to have a ton of people, if you price it right, coming through your home. So it's still important, be just below those margins in terms of pricing brackets, and you can succeed. So project homes, this is probably the most complicated because now we're going to have to do some math on, does it make sense for you to update some things? And the ROI on a lot of home renovations is just not there. Are we going to have to talk about seller concessions? How much is the structural damage versus cosmetic little fixes that can be done? And all of this needs to be factored in not just your price, but in how you're marketing your home. Are you willing to give some concessions? Because that could be worth $40,000 to some people. So instead of having to reduce your price by $40,000, maybe you fix some stuff up for some people. there's a strategy that can go into these homes that need a little bit more work. However, if you price these right, these can be seen as the biggest deals to people. So you actually can get bidding wars if you start low on these, low for you. This can happen with a $1.5 million home that's just old and hasn't been maintained that well. So I'm not saying these are cheap homes. These can be beautiful, stunning homes. They just need a lot of work that goes into them. So understanding how to value that work in terms of whether it's renovating, the ROI on that, if it's concessions, if it's just pricing lower than you otherwise might, all of this is going to come into play when you're dealing with homes that need bigger projects. Okay, and then I talk about this in a lot of my videos on Instagram. So if you want to get a little more in depth, please check those out. We'll also talk about these. I think I'm going to put out another video this week. This will be a little bit more in there, but micro location pricing, how street factors can change the value of your home. So the Philly suburbs are very micro market heavy, whether that's because some people just have dreams of living in a certain town on the main line. Maybe they just want that livability and space of a little bit further out in Chester County. Maybe they want the commute convenience of the Jersey suburbs, whatever it might be, the New York City access of Bucks County, the DC access of Southern Chester County, whatever it might be. So there are a bunch of factors that you should consider. I have a few written down here, so I'm just going to read through them right now. There are a lot more than just this. They're going to change depending on what your home is bringing to the table. But here are some that I've seen talking to clients, some that we dealt with when we were moving. So you need to think about traffic and cut through streets. You need to think about proximity to major roads. So thinking like Route 30, 202, 476, the Blue Route, same, 76. Train noise versus walkability benefits. So it's very helpful to be near train stations. You're going to get a premium for that. But if you have a train going through your backyard, that's going to be a detriment. So figuring out how to calculate the pros and cons of that. Parking constraints, particularly if you live near walkable areas, think near Suburban Square. And this is also going to be a factor when you're setting up open houses, whether you should be doing that, should not be doing that. Lot shape, slope, drainage. We actually, when we were moving in here, got a bit of a deal because we're sloped up a bit, but we found our flat driveway, which is sick, so I can play basketball with the little dude. And then backyard privacy and usable outdoor space. And this can include amenities. Maybe you have a back patio, maybe you have a back deck, maybe you have a pool, maybe you have a fire pit. All of these things are going to factor in as well on both sides. Maybe people are freaked out by having a pool because they have little kids on the way. Maybe they're freaked out by fire pits. Maybe they just want a full yard of grass, so they don't love the patio back there. You need to think about all of these things. And you need to do it because buyers are pricing all these things. They might not say it out loud at an open house, but they will do it with their offers. And so I've talked about this before. I'll talk about this in the future. Again, head over to my Instagram, Eric Kelly Realtor. The first 7 days on market, this is where sellers have the most leverage. This is where, based on your marketing, based on your social media presence, based on how your home looks, based on your staging, and based on your price, this can really make, you can get a ton of offers through the door, you can get escalation clauses rolling, you can get people trying to outbid each other for your home, or it can break. You could price too high, it doesn't move, you don't have anyone coming through the door, no private viewings are booked, and now we're already thinking in our head, do we need to fully remarket this thing? Do we need to unlist this thing? Do we need to reduce the price on this home? So taking advantage of these first few days, few weeks on market is extremely important. One more factor to consider that I don't talk about as much is how the submarket influences how to go about this first week or two on the market. So if we're thinking about walkable and lifestyle driven areas, so Ardmore, Westchester, Phoenixville media. Presentation momentum matter even more because buyers can fall in love quickly in more privacy and lot-driven pockets. So think parts of Haverford, Villanova, Devon. Buyers will still respond to momentum, but they also pay a lot of attention to quality and documentation. So you can really build momentum around the walkable pockets. It's going to be a little different when you're in these less walkable, more purely suburban pockets where buyers are looking for a specific thing in a home rather than a specific thing in a location. So let's talk about what people never want to talk about because people view it as a bad sign. Often it can be a bad sign, which is why we want to price right the first time. But let's talk about what to do when the market gives you feedback that you don't necessarily like. So what is the market giving you feedback? It's showings and it's offers. And I'm going to include people coming through open houses in the showings part. So typically how it goes is somewhere 10-1 showings to offer. So if you have 20 people see your home combined coming through an open house and the private showings, maybe on a weekday they're coming through, then you're probably going to get about 2 offers out of that. Now that can change. Maybe your home is perfectly priced. You just don't have that much of a marketing team, which sucks because maybe you'd have even more people in. But if you have a great home, turnkey, priced really well, and it's just not that many people know about it, that ratio could shrink a little bit. So maybe you have 20 people come through, but you get 8 offers out of it. And the reverse can happen too. Maybe you have a ton of momentum going into the launch of your listing, but you didn't price it that great. We did no staging and the marketing's kind of meh. Maybe you could get 20 people in, but you only get 1 offer, maybe no offers. So understanding how to set yourself up to drop that ratio. We want a smaller ratio of showings to offers because that just means you're getting a bunch of offers. But we also want to maximize showings. So what happens when you're not getting showings? You're not getting offers. So the issue is usually price bracket is not matched to your marketing. So if you have high showings and no offers, the issue is normally value perception. It's just not priced quite right, or there's something up with the home that wasn't factored into the price. And so this is where sellers often make the wrong move and can hurt themselves long term. So they do a tiny reduction. They think that, oh, it's just off by a little bit. We had people coming through, they just weren't making offers. Let's drop it a bit. But once you drop it once, the psychology buyers have looking at your house changes. That first offer makes buyers think, are they going to do this again? If I'm the one who jumps in now, am I the schmuck that's going to get taken by these people? And so what happens is you get less momentum after this first little tiny price drop, and now you have to drop again, and then that just snowballs down until now we're either way below our original list price or we're talking about taking it off the market and starting over in a month, 2 months, 6 months, maybe next year. And that is what we ultimately really want to avoid. So if you are in one of those low momentum, low showing, low offer situations, and you don't want to fully unlist your home and come back at a different time, you need to make one bigger, decisive price adjustment. Essentially treat it like a relaunch of your home, whole new weekend of open houses. We need to be talking to everyone we can about getting those private showings up too. And that sends a clear message that we're doing this once, we just missed something on the first one. Here's where the home is at now. Let's get the ball rolling again. So do you want to avoid that in the first place? Of course you do. But if you do have to do it, don't chase the market down because you're going to ultimately end up lower than if you just made one decisive price drop. But let's talk about the final takeaways here. We've covered a decent amount of information here. So pricing a home in 2026 requires a system. Utilizing the stack of data, my dog is snoring loud right now. Using that stack of data that we talked about earlier, so list to sale ratio, months of inventory, comps, comps, but looking at their days on market. All of this goes into your price factor, respecting psychological thresholds. So you need to stay below those big zero numbers so that when you're showing up in searches, it's in the most searches, not just the bottom end of searches. You need to price condition honestly. You need to be honest with yourself. Is this really a turnkey home, or are people going to probably have to come in here and paint or replace some carpet? Or is this bigger? Is there something structural? Are we super outdated in terms of major areas, bathrooms, kitchens, where people are going to have to come in and they're doing projects when they move in? Being honest with yourself about that is big. Once you have a sense of what your comps are, how they did on the market, what the stats are telling you, what your microlocation is telling you, what your price band is telling you, and what your home condition is telling you, then you launch hard at the right price. And I promise you, even though it might feel slower than some years right now, well-priced homes, factoring in all of this information, move fast. They move really fast. So if you're thinking about listing your home, Chester County, the main line, Bucks County, over the Delaware into Jersey, Haddonfield, Medford, any of those areas, please consider this pricing plan. Please factor in all of this information when you're listing your home. If you have questions about how to do this, please reach out to me. I would love to help. Maybe you're already working with someone else and you have some questions in your mind. Is this going well? At least now you have a checklist to go, hey, I don't think we really factored this in the right way. Maybe we should be considering this. So your best path to top tier value is to make sure you understand why you should be pricing your home in a certain way. And then once you decide on that price, market it like crazy. Until next time, guys, please reach out with any questions. I would love to talk. Bye now.